Serious. Friends of sociopaths/psychopaths, what was your most uncomfortable moment with them? My sister is a sociopath. It took me a lot of years to realize this and stop rationalizing it. I'm a diabetic and have been in comas. During the last one in 2015, after a year of no contact, she showed up at the hospital saying I had expressed to her that my wishes were do not resuscitate. About 12 of my friends shouted her down, and I woke up 3 days later on my own. If I had coded during that time, however, there would have been a lot of gray area around if they were allowed to revive me. About 4 months later, she took out a life insurance policy on me and asked me to sign it. I said no, lol. I no longer speak to her. Oh man, this blew up. I should add that I now have very clear wishes notarized and copies kept with my doctors and trusted friends. She's not taking me out that easily. Thank you for being concerned. It's great advice for everyone in a medical situation to have just in case. My ex would say headlines, headlines, which meant I would be headlines in tomorrow's newspaper because she was going to kill me. I mean, at least that's kind of quirky and fun? Hee hee. This kid in my 8th grade class. He showed us a video of him lighting a cat on fire while it was alive. He thought it was funny. We reported the video to the school and he was apprehended the next day. I believe you can find a news story online about it. It happened in Maryland a few years ago. I was making some brownies. My sister was visiting for some reason. Maybe it was Christmas? Anyway, I like my brownies gooey and hot, so I'm cutting into them a little earlier than I should. Sister flips the frick out and starts beating on me, grabbing heavier and more dangerous weapons from whatever she can reach, pans, rolling pins, etc. Becomes a scuffle where she keeps screaming, "Stop hitting me!" while all I'm doing is grabbing her wrists to avoid taking one to the head. Maybe it's not the most uncomfortable she's made me or the most evil thing she's done, and she's done worse to people we aren't related to, I know. But when people ask, why is your sister so crazy? That's the memory that comes into my head. Her giant freakout over brownies that I was making. We were cleaning our guns. This guy pointed the gun at me and asks me if I trusted him. Do you think the gun is unloaded? He asks me. I could be negligent or evil, and I could have left a bullet in there. He pulls the trigger, laughs, and carries on cleaning the gun like nothing. He thought it was funny. Edit. FAQ. You need to tell the police. We were the police. I hope you don't associate with this person anymore. Nope. Second Amendment. Not American. Gun training. He knew it was against all regulations. That's why it was so funny, according to him. This guy still has a gun? Nope. This was 20 years ago. His gun privilege was revoked from him after an incident when he shot at a wall over a colleague's head. He shot wide over his head and was surprised by everyone's response to the incident. I wasn't trying to kill him or anything, that's why I shot over his head, he said. I dated someone who I now believe is a sociopath. The most uncomfortable thing while we were dating was that he would constantly whisper things in my ear in public, in earshot of other people, like, "Do you think I look hot right now?" Or, "Do you think I'm cool?" And the first few times I thought he was joking, so I laughed and he'd get angry. He wanted a serious answer. He wanted me to tell him how much I wanted to jump his bones right there in front of all of our friends. While they were watching and listening, I get lectured afterwards like, you really insulted me personally when you laughed at me in front of everyone. He could also cry on cue to get what he wanted, and as soon as he got what he wanted, it would instantly switch off and he'd turn very serious and tell me what a horrible person I was. The instant emotional switches are disarming. When he broke up with me, I went from being his favorite person in the world to instantly at the very bottom of his crap list. He laughed when I cried on multiple occasions, calling me ridiculous. What's very alarming about people like him is how many people they can get on their side with their charm. None of his current friends know anything about his behavior behind closed doors. And they're all new people. All the people who caught on when we were dating are gone from his life. He has convinced his new friends that I'm a psychopath because I tried to tell others what happened, so whenever I say anything about what a creep he is, I get brigaded by the new people who are now being manipulated. Also, he is completely dead in the face and eyes until you interact with him, and then it's like he becomes animated. Good lord, this person sounds genuinely pretty frightening. That first thing felt like he was just super insecure, but the rest definitely makes this guy sound like a manipulative sociopath. Yikes. I've been longtime friends with a sociopath. He is honestly like my brother. We've developed this relationship that basically treats me like his moral compass, but it doesn't always work. He is still manipulative and cruel at times, and he does only truly care about himself, but he tries to be a good person because he doesn't want to be an a-hole. This being said, my most uncomfortable moment with him would have to be when he was telling me about watching some guy almost die. He was telling me how he knew he should have stopped watching and helped him, but he was too interested in what the outcome would be if he didn't help. It was creepy to know that as hard as he may try to be a decent person, sometimes he still can't help himself. He once tried to manipulate me to come in and work basically 50 hours, 10 of which would be off the clock so that I didn't get overtime, because he knew that if he could keep labor low on his shift, he could get a promotion. He would also expressly lie to my face about giving me a break, saying verbatim, "I'll come back here in a moment and take over so that you can go on break." Then he would just never come. Then when the time has passed to where a break would be irrelevant, i.e. 30 minutes before my shift is over, he'd offer again. I don't know if that guy sounds like a sociopath or just a normal butthole. I have a friend who's a pathological liar. He is also mostly Scottish in heritage, northern Scotland where the Viking influence is. He's 6'8", 350 pounds when he's watching his weight, 400 plus when he isn't, and there is a lot of muscle to go with everything else. The lies aren't all that awful most of the time. He's known as a very entertaining storyteller, and everyone knows he'll embellish greatly from time to time, but he can't keep a girlfriend. Apparently, he can't be honest. Is a pathological cheater. The lies catch up with his relationships in a few weeks at most. One day we were in a taxi together, and he got the idea that the driver was taking a route that was unnecessarily long. He stopped the cheerful story he was telling me mid-sentence. His face changed, and he barked at the cab driver in a voice I'd never heard, loud and angry and aggressive. The cab driver immediately pulled over and let us out without paying, and a good thing too. I think my friend was about to kill him. I was petrified in my seat. I felt like he might kill everyone in range. I was terrified. It was the last time I spent time with him, though I'd known him for 20 years. I later learned that he won't associate with someone after they've seen him snap, as one of his other ex-friends put it. When he would tell a story that I was a part of and make up huge lies of what happened, even sometimes switch his role and mine, and I would just awkwardly nod my head and wonder if he truly remembered it that way. He had a gas-powered pellet gun, and we were 13 years old, and it was one of my first times being high. He had me against the wall and gave me 5 minutes to choose between him shooting me in the genitals or in the head. If I didn't choose, he said he was just gonna go nuts. I just kind of fidgeted in place saying, "You're gonna kill me." I was 13 and high. And at the end of the 5 minutes, he told me he was freaking with me. He also emptied a huge box of matches into the sink one time, and when we all told him not to, he called us peas and lit it all on fire. He was a major pyro. I'm pretty sure he's in jail now. I'm 19 and he's 20. Don't know if that counts as a full-blown sociopath or not, but that does sound like a few of the guys I grew up around. I know for a fact at least one of them is in jail right now. Probably when I found out he was dating 3 other girls at the same time, and the girls and I exchanged screenshots of conversations with him, how creepily similar the way he spoke to us all. Charming, nice dude, unless you don't give him what he wants. In high school, my boyfriend at the time and I shared a math class together. It was well known we were dating, so I would always take him his homework via teacher's request if he missed. He skipped a lot. I broke up with him over Xmas. He cheated on me. Math teacher obviously still assumed we were together, so he asked me to bring him his homework. I did. Go to his house wanting to drop it off at his doorstep. He told me to come in and explain it to him. He locked his bedroom door and started saying crap like, "If I can't have you, then no one else can. I could get you back in a second, just admit it," etc. Then the true kicker, "If I killed you or if you died, I would keep your body in my closet or hung behind my door just to do it with it." Disclaimer, I never did it with him, and I think that killed him. He then proceeded to try and make out with me and jam his hands down my pants. He actually thought it was endearing and had no idea why I was so upset. I got out, called my mom to pick me up, and ran back to the school. He lived close. Terrifying. To this day, I'm still horrified about it and him. Last I heard, he was trying to be a magician, looks like Charles Manson, and is in and out of psych wards. Ladies, just so you know, if a guy ever does something like that to you, you have every right to report that to the authorities. I don't love our legal system all the time, but I friggin' hate monsters like that more. What he did was threat and assault. He told me I must be seriously mentally ill for being upset that he, while dating me, propositioned my married best friend. My sister, who I no longer have contact with, has psychopathic tendencies. My worst moment was about 5 years ago. She was showing me a new knife of hers, a giant blade with serrations down the back. I remember looking her in the eyes, and there was this cold alien look to them. The hairs on the back of my neck rose, and I had this idea she was going to stab me. I realized my instincts were picking up on her thinking about stabbing me. She didn't stab me, but I kept thinking about it, and I truly think she was imagining what it would be like to stab me with her new knife. I have a lot of stories about my sociopathic former roommate, but one of the most uncomfortable moments I had with him was when he stared me dead in the eyes and asked, "Bravado, how can I express more realistic emotions?" And then he became slightly annoyed when my one answer was, "Have them in the first place." Someone in our extended family, he offered to kill my cat for me to save a vet bill. The cat wasn't sick or old. He was just very enthusiastic about helping us out with that particular issue. He's not allowed to be alone with pets anymore. I know some of these sociopaths are threatening people, but the ones who would hurt pets should be put on a list. You hurt my pets, you will regret it. My brother is a sociopath, as well as a homeless heroin junkie. For the most part, he stays hidden from view and away from my family. During his active times, where he comes around looking for money from family members, is the most uncomfortable, because when he doesn't get it, he resorts to burglary. Having to leave home not knowing if you'll be burglarized is stressful. I wish he would just OD or go to prison already. It would be so much better for everyone. When they told me they see their friends and people as playthings. Probably when he thought it was funny to hold a knife to my throat. She used to brag about her therapist diagnosing her as a sociopath, and then obviously deny it when it was ever brought up. I think the moment that put it all into perspective was when she manipulated me into having a threesome with her and her ex. She knew I was in love with her, because she thought it would get him to take her back. It goes a little deeper than that, but that's the gist of it. I just about stabbed my sociopath stepfather in the guts while doing dishes. He'd been doing his thing, which was sitting behind me about 15 feet away and staring at me without saying anything for about 20 minutes while I cleaned up the kitchen after dinner. 20 freaking minutes of staring. I was washing a butcher knife when the hair on the back of my neck stood up and I realized he was right behind me. He was a big guy, and I am not sure how I did not hear him. I turned around with a knife and instinctively shoved it at him. He managed to suck in his gut and not get cut. I was saying over and over again, "Get the frick away from me, get the frick away from me, get the frick away from me." He didn't make a sound and went upstairs. I was 16 years old, and that's when I knew one of us was going to go to jail if nothing changed. Okay, that one is genuinely terrifying. To be 16 and live with someone like that? I am so sorry. Married one. Last straw was the day I caught his reflection as I passed by. Pure evil and hatred in his eyes. I told him I was leaving the following week. He said, "If I ever see you somewhere with someone else, I won't say a word to you." I said, "Okay." Then he added, "I'll just walk up to you and shoot you in your pretty face." I was moving some things out and looked under the bed for a pair of shoes. Found his guns, fully loaded and out of their cases, under his side of the bed. I went to the cops. Nothing came of it. Fast forward and he remarries before the ink is dry on the divorce. New wife shoots him in the head and kills him in his sleep. Proceeds to kill herself by ODing on his pain pills. Yeah, I sleep better these days. My uncle. We found out things in bits and pieces. My dad and he worked together. He got my dad fired by saying all sorts of lies to their boss, and then pretended to be the white knight by offering him a job in another country where he's living. Money was tight back then, and we were in a lot of debt, so dad agreed. He took him there, gave him work, but also made him a slave to his wife and kids who also lived there. Dad was expected to cook food, wash the dishes, clean up the dining table after Uncle's family ate, and then eat himself. Yeesh. Dad didn't tell us until much later. According to the rules set by Uncle, he wasn't to contact us often, should mind his own damn business even if his daughter didn't turn up home all night, and keep his mouth shut about work. Dad was miserable there, and we couldn't do much because, again, that job was a welcome relief to us. Uncle, meanwhile, would come every night to our home, have breakfast and dinner that my mom generously cooked because his family was abroad, while bishing about my dad in front of us. One day I had finally reached my breaking point, and I started crying because I felt horrible for Dad, who was trying so hard to make things right for us. Uncle just sat opposite to me, smiling. Goddamn smiling. We'll never forget that psycho grin on his face. Days later, Dad suddenly turned up unannounced at home. Turns out he'd been dumped by Uncle to our city without prior knowledge. Dad had no guts to tell us what happened. We realized Uncle was a psychopath later. He'd routinely mentally torture people and enjoy their misery while pretending to offer sympathies and help. He's in a powerful spot, so he offers his victims jobs. Once they accept, he makes them entirely dependent on him. He then put his victims under even more psychological stress, be it threatening to cut off ties or getting them fired if they disagreed with him. My dad was really messed up for days. He'd swing from utter despair to not speaking for days to extreme violence to absolutely broken. Got beat up a bit for trying to calm him down. Dad could finally regain his mental sanity after we cut off old ties to that uncle. Last we heard, he wants to contact my dad because they're brothers, and people realized what a piece of crap he is, so they avoid him too. Dad's like, oh hell nah. When he took the opportunity of being alone with my mom for 1 minute to stare her down and ask if she thought he was mature for his age. He's freaking creepy. I dated one a bit over a decade ago. He fits the description of a sociopath more than a psychopath, but he's also narcissistic. We dated in high school for a little over a year. Aside from the constant gaslighting, lies, manipulation, and threats, he was basically a crappy person who warped my mind so much that I actually believed I'd be nothing without him. Whether driving erratically with me in car when I questioned him or threatening physical violence on me and my family if I broke up with him, he was truly terrifying by the end of our relationship. The absolutely most uncomfortable/terrifying moment was when he put a loaded hunting rifle in my face. He was addicted to weed. I don't believe weed's a dangerous drug at all, but he was so psychologically warped that he believed he was going through severe physical and mental withdrawals if he went a day or two without smoking. One night, he decided he was going to rob a small convenience store in his town for weed money. I stepped in front of his door and blocked his path, and he pointed the gun at me. I bravely broke up with him a few days later, blocked him on social media, wouldn't answer his calls, and wouldn't answer the door when he showed up to my parents' house. It took months for him to get the point that I was serious. 12 years later, and I still have nightmares of him. That is pretty frightening. I feel awful for you because your emotions not only make you ignore that stuff for longer than you would like to admit, but also make you feel worse about it afterward. I think my best friend may have been. For example, she got a job at a business that she wanted to learn, and when she had made enough money to start her own business, she totaled her employee's van, hired off the designer, and stole all the clients. Then she paid the designer way less than she had promised and then closed her business completely in a few months when she was bored. She also pulled really bad things in relationships, which I really don't want to get into. Well, anyway, she was about to ruin someone's life again. I couldn't take it anymore and ratted her out. That is when I heard all the lies she had spun her whole life, that I lived with her and she supported me and I was a heroin addict, that she had starred in major films, that she was a prom queen. So I cut her out of my life, and after weeks of her calling me and begging me to come back, I was sitting at home, looked up, and saw her standing over me. My first thought was that she had killed my dog. She hadn't. Okay, the story just ends there, but I'm relieved to hear she at least hadn't killed your dog. But if you thought she did, I imagine you John Wicked her, and that is why the story just ended. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. I'm an ex-friend of a sociopath. I think it was when we were hanging out and we started arguing about me going to his house. I'd left my wallet there and I told him this and told him we needed to go back so I could get it. Then he started claiming that his parents didn't like me and didn't want me at his house. He said since they weren't home, that would just make it worse. I just kept saying I need my damn wallet and that he could get it for me. He proceeded to call me selfish and a monster for arguing with him. Like, he yelled it in my face in a public area. I was shocked and had nothing to say. Then, he proceeded to act like nothing happened, asking me if we should get food, etc. I eventually got my wallet back from him. He didn't spend any money of mine or anything, but needless to say, we aren't friends anymore. Honestly, I didn't even consider him a sociopath until telling my therapist about how he manipulated me into thinking everything was my fault and how me being better mentally was never enough. She basically told me straight up, he's a sociopath, and it clicked. He used me just to fill his ego. I'm friends with a legit psychopath. I am on mobile, so I'll be brief. Not all psychopaths are necessarily a danger to society in the sense of physical violence, crazy, or unreasonable. G is a close friend of mine. He is of shallow moral character, devious, manipulative, ready to screw anyone out of money, and capable of physical violence when pressed. He's scary. That said, he is deeply intelligent, quick with a laugh, non-judging. You could talk to this guy about anything, he just doesn't care. He's a lot of fun to talk to or party with because he is so unique. I trust him to be himself. He has never screwed me over, except I'd seemed to lose money when I went into business with him. The most creepy he's been, and he knows I feel this way, is when we talk about moralistic standards for society. Essentially, he thinks the weak and stupid, but who makes that call, should be essentially weeded out, put on farms or something, shot. He gives no frick about anyone else save for a select few. He's not racist or sexist, he just thinks he's better than others based on smarts, looks, ability. He feels the dumb should not be allowed to thrive. Creepy, huh? I remember one conversation we had when wasted I couldn't finish because we weren't getting anywhere with it. He won't change. He doesn't empathize. That said, he is a reasonable person. He's not going to put his darker, non-profiting thoughts into action. He's not interested. He likes money and doesn't mind ripping people off. A businessman, cunning. He exists for profit. That said, he'd help me out of any kind of a sticky situation. Mostly for the fun of it. He's bored a lot and understands he needs others. He likes me because I'm interesting and feels I'm on his level. We speak openly about his psychopathy because I'm so interested in it. We've been friends for 7 years. We're close for 3 years before he moved to another city. I stayed at his house in 2016 for a couple weeks. Feel free to AMA. Well, I don't imagine I'll get the answers here, but I have a ton of questions. It's just so weird to me to consider someone a friend who doesn't like you on an emotional level. Like, I have problems with thinking friends don't like me when they do. Not sure what I would do with a friend whom I knew didn't actually care for me. Honestly, just normal conversation. We sensationalize it a lot in the media, but really, having a conversation with someone that can't feel empathy is super boring. Me, hey, I was driving to work today and some guy cut across 4 lanes of traffic and almost caused an accident. Sociopath friend. Okay? Me. All right, well, good talking to you. Roll my eyes. Late to the game, but a friend of mine is a functioning psychopath. He has some severe anger issues, but knows on a logical level, not an emotional one, what the implications of unleashing this are. He has no remorse. He could kill his mother and not care, but he knows this is morally wrong, even if he doesn't feel it's wrong. He can also be extremely manipulative with no remorse, and I've seen that come out to play sometimes, and it isn't pretty. His ego is well endowed. He's got one of the highest pain tolerances that I've seen, part of a suspension group. And he's a pretty great cuddler. To meet him, he's pretty strange, but all in all, he's a decent person, and I admire that he's decided to be better than his diagnosis. In high school and college, I knew a guy who kept file folders with information about people he knew, actual file folders labeled with their names. He would take notes on people he knew, what he thought of as their personality traits, their strengths that he might have to overcome, their weaknesses that he felt he could exploit. These notes, along with his detailed analysis journals, because seriously, he analyzed everyone he knew, would go into his folders. I only saw these folders a single time, but I saw his note-taking almost every time I was around him. He didn't try to hide it. This guy sounds like Mitt Romney with his binders full of women. I think we've got a future politician on our hands, folks. My ex invited me over to her house to catch up. I assumed she was being genuine because she had a boyfriend at the time and it had been 3 years since we broke up. But before I came over, I told her that I just wanted to catch up and nothing more. I said that I'd leave if she tried to hook up with me. I did this because I knew she had cheated on her boyfriend before. She promised me that she just wanted to catch up and that she didn't have any ulterior motives. I knew that she was a psychopath and that she took medication for it, but I didn't really think about that. Stupidly, I went over to her house. Within 30 minutes, she was trying to make a move on me. I told her that I was uncomfortable and wanted to leave. She said to me, "No, you can't. You're going to stay the night and sleep with me." I told her that I was really uncomfortable with that and tried getting up. She pinned me down and flicked the light switch so I couldn't see anything. I tried pushing her off me, but she was holding me down. I convinced her to turn the lights back on, and she did. After she flicked the lights back on, she pointed to the wall right behind us and said, "You see that mark on the wall? That's the mark from when I stabbed the wall with my knife." That's when I was certain that she was off of her meds. I spent the following few hours trying to calm her down. I was able to do so and then got the frick out of there as fast as I could. My brother is a psychopath. I could tell you so many stories about him. Hell, you could make it into a movie. He's an incredible con artist and somehow has never been thrown in jail despite having committed fraud multiple times and stolen tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. My mother has NPD, which is in a similar class of disorders, and she is far more dangerous than my brother. That said, my brother would probably sell his only child if he got enough money for it. I just don't think he'd be capable of killing anyone. With someone who's willing to do all the things you hinted at, that sounds like a pretty dangerous assumption to make. I know you want to think the best you can of family, but be careful. Dated someone with whom I shared a similar dark sense of humor, and the week before I finally figured out what he was staring at me and I stared back. One of those let's gaze into each other's eyes moments went quickly awry when I got a weird feeling and said, "It's like I can see all the way through you to your soul," to which he responded, "I have no soul." Of course, then all the darkly humorous things he said over the course of the relationship flew back at me in my face, and I realized he probably wasn't joking most of the time. My best friend in high school was a sociopath, though I didn't realize it until later in life. He was good-looking and astoundingly manipulative. He could talk pretty much any girl into bed. I was always a bit socially awkward and never got laid at that age. Whenever I confided in him that I liked someone, he would target them and frick them. They could be a nice girl, virgin, whatever, it didn't matter. He was that good. One of the most uncomfortable moments of my life was after we graduated and we were hanging out, and he got invited over to a girl's house who we graduated with. He knew I thought she was cute, said it was a party, and that she had said she liked me. Well, we got there, and it was only her roommate, and her roommate's boyfriend, and I didn't drive. He immediately goes in her room and fricks the girl. I was really mad off and confronted him about it. Of course, he made me seem like the a-hole and told everyone that I invited myself over and made me feel sad and pathetic. I completely lost it and broke down crying in anger and felt ridiculous. Luckily, her roommate was nice enough to drive me home. That was his MO. He wasn't violent or anything, but he liked hurting people emotionally. That night was the last night I ever spoke to him. I still feel stupid for being friends that long. Hey, don't feel stupid. Like you said, this guy was an amazing manipulator, and that's what he did to you. My ex-husband told me he took my dog to his friend's house to live. Find out a few years later that he took her to his father's land and shot her. Multiple times because the first was not enough. He proceeded to skin her and take out her parts. Pulled out her heart and showed his friend laughing. Told me his friend was being a pea about it. He laughed and was completely unaware of any wrongdoing. Ugh, so glad I'm out of that situation. A couple I know were having marital difficulties and were thinking of divorcing. It wasn't a done deal by any means, so they were both invited to this party. Most of the people in the party know the wife better and the husband only slightly. He turns up and she does not. He goes to the host and asks if he can have a couple of minutes to announce something to everybody. Sure, says the host, no problem, go ahead. He proceeds to get everybody's attention and publicly trash his wife, accusing her of infidelity and whatnot. The host throws him out of the party. He goes peacefully because he's now done what he came to do. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.